Hello and welcome to this conversation with the Convenor brought to you by the Australian National University's College of Law. In this series, we'll be introducing you to some of the educators from our postgraduate law programs and learn how their courses can unlock personal and professional opportunities for you. My name is Tom and I'm the manager of the marketing and communications team here at the ANU College of Law. And I'm delighted to be joined by Dr Bill Boothby, an honorary professor with the ANU College of Law, who's going to be talking to us today about the courses he teaches here. Bill joins us from his home in the United Kingdom. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Tom, for arranging this.
To begin, can you tell us a bit about yourself? So your expertise, your career before academia, and just an introduction to yourself.
Yes, certainly. My background really is 30 years of service in the legal branch of the UK Royal Air Force. And it was during that period of service that quite by accident, I found myself being selected to be a member of the UK delegation to a diplomatic conference where a ban on anti-personnel landmines was negotiated. And I was sort of semi-thrown into this subject and developed quite a considerable interest in international law and the treaty making part of it. That then led me not many years later to set up the UK's system for legally reviewing new weapon systems. And I led that system for the first 3 or so years from an office down in Shrivenham in Wiltshire in the UK. Thereafter, I wrote a doctoral thesis entitled Weapons and the Law of Armed Conflict, and that became my first book published by Oxford. And then when I retired from the Air Force in 2011, I wrote another book, a rather huge tome, I'm afraid, this time entitled The Law of Targeting. And the books have appeared somehow at a rough frequency of about once every couple of years since then. And it's in that context that I started teaching at ANU pretty much after I retired in 2011. And I've been teaching for ANU ever since. And I'm very grateful to ANU for allowing me to do so.
Well, we're very grateful to have you here among our faculty, Bill. Can you tell me more about your interest in international law and what sparked that?
Well, as I say, it was originally sparked by participation in this negotiation, and then by the realization that the UK was a party to a treaty which obliged us to check on the legality of the new weapons that we were acquiring. And we didn't seem to have a coherent, coordinated system for doing so. And it was setting up that system in the UK and then realizing that other states had a similar problem to the UK's problem that got me interested in weapons law initially, and then thereafter international law in general.
Yeah, and coming to your role here at ANU, teaching the courses that you do, can you tell me more about that? You currently teach 4 courses. Can you share a little bit about what they are and what students can expect to learn from these?
Well, yes. The first of them is really, it's the law of weaponry and targeting. And it's based on the fact that I've written significant books on both subjects. And what we try to teach is the details of the international law principles and rules that regulate, firstly, which weapons a state is permitted to acquire and use and which ones are prohibited. And then secondly, how the targeting process should be undertaken in compliance with international law. Now, clearly, we see on our television screens all sorts of footage, often of dreadful events occurring during the course of international conflicts. And I suppose one of the purposes of this course is to enable people who are viewing that sort of footage to have a rather more informed view as to what is and what is not allowed. My second course really stems from an international project that I was involved in back in about 2007 onwards, the aim of which was to write the law rules and principles that seemed to be applicable in the context of armed conflict activities taking place in cyberspace. We had seen events involving Estonia and Georgia in 2007 and 2008, respectively. And the realization was that this was a subject where it was clear that cyber was going to be used in connection with future conflicts, but what law would apply? So a group of us got together and prepared the Tallinn Manual on that subject. And what I teach is the body of law that seems to be capable of application in the context of cyber warfare activity, emphasizing, however, and this is the complication in the course, the difference of view that exists between the East and the West on that subject. My third course stems from a conversation that I had with a professor in the University of Sydney, where it became obvious to me that those who really advanced their careers in international law and generally in law tend to be those who are able to take the strategic view and to operate at the strategic level, as opposed to being confronted with a strategic level issue, always bringing it down to the tactical level, if I can put it in those terms. And so what I do in this course is to present people with 10 strategic level areas of interest or issues and analyze them, discuss them, and try to, I suppose, discuss them at the strategic level, with a view to demonstrating how strategic level thought can best be undertaken. And then the fourth course is pretty super topical at the moment and stems from a book I and a colleague published late last year on the law relating to nuclear weapons. And what we try to do is to analyze which bodies of law apply in the international law context to the possession and use of nuclear weapons. And we try to produce as up-to-date and clear an interpretation of the international law of the subject as one can. So those are the four courses. What do students get from those courses? I suppose the idea is that at the end of the course, the student will be able to look at issues in each of those areas in a way that they wouldn't have been able to without having studied this particular course.
I'd love to learn more about the pattern of study for students of these courses. But before we do, Bill, I wonder if you could maybe debunk a myth for me. These courses, as you said, they're very timely, they're very topical. Are they, though, only suited to people that are aspiring to work in an international law context where that sort of knowledge is highly relevant, or in already in the military? Or are there broader opportunities from these courses? Because you touched on something before, talking about the importance of strategic thinking, and that seems like it's got quite wide application. Can you tell me more about the typical, I guess, type of student that comes to your course, if there is one?
I I try to make the courses accessible to all students. That's the first part of my approach. And secondly, my aim with these courses is to teach people basically how to think. And the topic tends to be the vehicle for delivering that. And therefore, yes, those who are aiming to take a role in government or take a role in the military or whatever will gain subject matter, if you like, benefit from studying these courses. But I think anybody and everybody would gain because of what they will learn in terms of the analytical approach. Because I think analysis and the ability to analyze and then reach a thought through interpretation of an issue is what one's looking for, really. And of course, quite apart from any of that, I try to make the courses interesting.
Well, I think critical thinking, problem solving, inquiry skills, these are all very highly valued skills for employees in a range of professions. So it's really interesting to see those connections made with these courses that you teach. Now, coming back to the study pattern and method, can you tell me more about these courses as intensives? What does that entail, Bill?
Well, intensives is really drawing the distinction between courses where you participate, say, between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock every Thursday afternoon, and a course such as the ones I teach, where we start on a Monday morning and the teaching of the course is finished by the end of the week. And I'm the first to appreciate that can have advantages and disadvantages for certain individuals. There'll be those who find that everything is coming at them pretty rapidly. But equally, the great advantage, and this is what students have told me who've participated, is that during that week, you can focus on the particular subject of that particular course. You can immerse yourself in it. You don't need to be reminded at the beginning of the next lecture what was discussed during the last lecture, because it was a lecture that took place not very long ago. And you can use the building blocks of understanding to start from scratch and end up 4.5 days later, 5 days later, having completed the course of study. The format of the teaching, there are periods of lecture, because self-evidently knowledge has to be imparted in order for sensible discussions to take place. And then what I tend to do is to intersperse these periods of lecture with putting the students into breakout rooms, because I'm teaching by Zoom. In other words, into work groups, if you like. And there are preset problems which I've dreamt up and posed to them. The students discuss these in the group format and then come back into plenary, and a spokesman for the group presents the group conclusions to the plenary. And we then discuss the conclusions that they come to. So effectively, what you have is an arrangement in which each element of the course, as it were, the students are exposed to it 3 times. Firstly, in the lecture, secondly, during the discussion in the work group, and thirdly, during the plenary discussion. And the idea of that is that the content, my reference to building blocks, I think is germane here, that each element in the course content is cemented, and then we move on to the next bit. And at the end of the process, the idea is that knowledge is developed in an orderly way.
And you mentioned that nuclear weapons law is super topical, and you're absolutely right on that. I think it's constantly in our news. How did this course come about?
I was invited to attend a conference at Stanford University near San Francisco. And this was to discuss what is called NC3, Nuclear Command, Control and Communications. And it became clear that there was an inadequate appreciation of the international law rules and principles that underpin what any NC3 system should be designed to achieve. And I pointed this out to one of the organizers of the conference. And you know what it is about the idea that you should never open your mouth unless you're prepared to take the consequences. Well, this was an observation I made to this organizer of the course at dinner. And by the end of the dinner, I'd been tasked with going away and writing a book to set forth nuclear weapons law. So I did, and with the assistance of my doctoral professor, Wolf-Heinrich von Heinich, we put together Nuclear Weapons Law, which was published by Cambridge University Press late last year. And that sets out a basic statement of the international law as we saw it, as it applies to nuclear weapons. What I'm now leading is a follow-on project aimed at securing a more globalized view. So we're bringing other experts in to comment on what we've written and offer their own perspectives, which we will then incorporate into a revised text. And so that's where I am at the moment on nuclear weapons law. But what I teach is based on the book that was published last year, and it seems to be a course that's going down well.
Now, students, of course, they can take your courses as students enrolled in our postgrad degree. So that's the Master of Laws, the Juris Doctor, our graduate certificates, and also as non-award studies. So taking those courses as standalone courses. But for a student thinking about applying for one of your courses, Bill, do they need to be an expert on international law or have any prerequisite knowledge?
No. I always start my courses right at the very beginning. And I always start by talking about what the notion of law means. And then I develop it to the idea of what international law in general is all about. And then we start talking about public international law. And then we burrow down into the particular topic of the course in question. So I tend to assume no knowledge. And then occasionally, partway through the course, I'll discover that assumption was an extremely valid assumption, because somebody will come up to me and say, well, actually, I've not studied any law up to this particular course. And then sometimes, if I'm very lucky, they'll say, and I'm finding it very interesting. But yeah, assume no knowledge. And I emphasize to the students, my intention, my aim is to start with all of the students with me, and to finish with all of the students with me, and to have them all remain with me throughout the teaching of the course. That's the philosophy. In terms of timing, the teaching tends to start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Canberra time. I stress that isn't 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my time in the UK, but then that's my problem based on time differences. And it'll run, generally speaking, until 9 o'clock in the evening. And the advantage there is for those students who, for instance, have jobs where it's possible for them to attend the teaching of the course without necessarily needing to take a complete week of leave. You can be working during the morning and early afternoon and then participate in the course. Equally, the courses tend to be recorded, so that if you miss a little bit, it's possible for you to consult the recording as well. And then the final message from me will be that the aim here is to combine, if you like, if I can put it in these terms, stretching your brains with at the same time a little bit of interest, I hope, and just occasionally a little bit of humor. The purpose is to make it a pleasant experience for you. And if you do decide to register and to participate, I do look forward to seeing you online.
Thank you, Bill. What a great note to end on. I'm thrilled that we're able to make this conversation work despite our time zones. So again, thank you for joining me on Conversation with a Convenor. If you'd like to learn more about the courses we've discussed today, please see the description and the links for this in this video, and you can learn about how you can start your studies here at the ANU College of Law, Australia's National Law School. That's all for now, and we hope to see you again soon.